Evan had never liked the nights on this planet. The wind outside the dome cut through every layer of insulation, carrying with it a cold so sharp it felt like it could slice through steel. The research outpost perched on the edge of a vast frozen plain, a tiny human bubble in a world of ice and darkness. Inside, the lights hummed softly, and warmth radiated from the panels built into the walls. But even here, Evan could feel the chill trying to creep in, trying to reach his bones. He had grown used to the isolation. Months of work alone or with a small team had dulled the edges of his fear. Nights were long and quiet, broken only by the distant groaning of the dome under the pressure of ice storms outside. But for the past week, something unusual had begun to disturb that quiet. It started subtly. A draft that seemed to move against the airflow of the vents, a shadow that lingered longer than it should have. And then, one night, Evan woke to the sound of his bedroom door sliding open. At first, he thought he had imagined it, a half-dream caused by exhaustion. But the shape was unmistakable. A figure moved silently into the room, her form tall and thin, with skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. She said nothing, just hovered near the edge of his bed, trembling as if the cold outside was following her inside. Evan's heart raced. He had never seen an alien up close. None of the other human researchers had, but he knew this was not one of the automated drones or environmental maintenance suits. There was something alive in front of him. "The cold won't let me," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the heating panels. It was soft and musical, yet tinged with fear. Evan blinked, unsure whether she was speaking to him or to the air itself. "Who are you?" he managed to ask, keeping his voice calm even as adrenaline flooded through him. She tilted her head, as if studying him, then stepped closer. "I need warmth," she said. Her words were strange, but the meaning was clear. She shivered violently, and Evan could see frost forming briefly on her hair, tiny crystals that disappeared the moment she moved. Evan wanted to call for help, but he sensed she was not dangerous. There was no aggression, only fear. Slowly, he reached toward the panel, increasing the room's temperature. The effect was immediate. The glow around her intensified slightly, and she let out a quiet sigh, almost of relief. "I am Evan," he said, trying to sound steady. "This is my room. You shouldn't be here alone." She looked at him, eyes wide and reflecting the light like small stars. "I cannot return," she whispered. "It is too cold. They are coming." "Who is coming?" he asked. She shook her head. "The cold. Alive. It hunts. I cannot go back. Not yet." Evan sat up, his mind racing. He had read about the native life forms on this frozen planet, the subterranean species that lived beneath the ice in thermal vent networks. Most of them avoided humans entirely. They were peaceful, distant, and careful. Yet here she was, stepping into his life, seeking refuge. Over the next few days, Evan tried to observe her. She would always appear at night, slipping silently through the door, whispering her repeated plea about the cold. She never ate or drank, never touched anything, and never interacted with the other researchers. She seemed drawn only to him. During the day, she vanished entirely, retreating into the shadows beyond the outpost. Evan began studying the planet more carefully. Instruments were showing strange anomalies. Thermal readings fluctuated wildly, with sudden drops that could not be explained by weather patterns. Sensors picked up tremors beneath the ice, and the research logs indicated shifts in the planet's crust that had not been predicted. It was as if something enormous moved beneath the frozen surface, unseen and relentless. He approached one of the senior scientists, Dr. Kale, about the readings. "There's something down there," Evan said, pointing at the monitor. "Something changing the environment. The temperatures, they're dropping faster than our models predict." Dr. Kale frowned, rubbing his temples. It's probably a geological shift. The ice layers are unstable. Nothing to panic about. You're overthinking it, Evan. But Evan was not convinced. The sensation of being watched, the cold that seemed unnatural, the appearance of the alien visitor, all of it told him something was wrong. One night, the visitor appeared again. This time, Evan was ready. He kept the lights dim, sat on the edge of his bed, and waited. She walked in, as silent as always, frost drifting from her form. But tonight, there was something different in her posture. Fear sharpened her movements, and she glanced toward the vents as if sensing something Evan could not. "They are here," she said. "Who?" he asked, heart hammering. "The sleeper," she whispered. "The ice. It wakes. It hunts warmth. Your heat. It can feel it." Evan felt a shiver run down his spine. The sleeper was something he had never heard of. She explained cautiously, speaking in broken fragments of the native tongue and simple English that Evan could understand. Ages ago, she said, her people had sealed away a force deep beneath the ice. A living cold that consumed warmth and energy. It had been dormant for centuries. But shifts in the ice, perhaps caused by tectonic activity or unknown triggers, had awakened it again. "It feeds. It grows," she said. "It takes warmth, life, energy. It is hungry." The thought of an entire force beneath the ice, growing stronger and hunting for heat, made Evan's blood run cold. He wanted to ask more questions, but the fear in her eyes stopped him. She was not exaggerating. Her species had survived the cold for centuries underground, yet even she trembled at the thought of the sleeper. Days passed, and Evan began to notice subtle changes in himself. He felt fatigue deeper than normal, a chill even within the heated dome, as if the sleeper was already reaching for him. The alien visitor came every night, often whispering warnings. "Stay warm. Stay safe. It is near." Despite the danger, he grew protective of her. She was fragile in ways humans could not imagine, shaped by a world that demanded survival in near absolute cold. But her courage in facing the nights alone inspired him. He wanted to understand her, help her, and survive alongside her. One evening, the storm outside reached a violent peak. Winds screamed across the ice plains, battering the dome with gusts that rattled the walls. The lights flickered. Evan's instruments went haywire, showing temperature drops faster than ever before. And then he heard it, the low, grinding roar beneath the ice, like the world itself groaning in pain. The alien figure appeared as always, but this time she froze completely. Her glowing form pulsed, and frost formed in swirling clouds around her. "It found us," she whispered. The sound was barely audible, but it carried a weight that froze Evan in place more than the cold ever could. He wanted to ask questions, to understand how it had found them, but she moved closer to him, wrapping herself as best she could in the warmth his body radiated. It was an instinctive act, desperate and human, as if she understood that warmth might be the only shield against what was coming. The night passed in tense silence. Outside, the winds battered the dome, and below something shifted beneath the ice, echoing with a deep, unnatural pulse. Evan kept watch, never blinking, never moving, feeling the weight of a world that had suddenly become far more dangerous than any human had predicted. By morning, the storm had lessened, but the warning remained. Evan realized that the sleeper's reach was not limited to the planet's surface or its hidden tunnels. It had found them, and it was only a matter of time before it would come for everything that generated heat. The alien visitor left at first light, slipping silently back into the shadows, leaving Evan with a new understanding of the threat and a new resolve. He had to learn more about her people, about the sleeper, about the ice beneath the planet. The human outpost was no longer a safe haven. It was the first line of defense against a force that could freeze the world itself. He gathered the research logs, old maps of the subterranean tunnels, and fragments of native records he had found in archives. He read and reread them, piecing together what little he could. Every legend of the native people spoke of a great cold that consumed everything in its path, always returning when the planet shifted. And every night the alien visitor returned, whispering the same warning. The night came again, darker than before, with the cold seeping through every crack of the dome. Evan prepared for her arrival, keeping the room warm, ready to face the unknown together. When she appeared, frost swirling around her, she looked at him with eyes that seemed to hold centuries of fear and hope. "The cold won't let me," she whispered again. But this time, Evan understood. She was not only seeking warmth, she was seeking trust, protection, and perhaps a glimmer of hope in a universe that had suddenly become more hostile than either of them had imagined. And Evan knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, beneath the frozen skies, against a threat older than any human mind could comprehend. The first part of the night ended with them standing together, the warmth of the room a fragile shield against the endless ice outside, and the knowledge that the sleeper was awake, waiting, and already watching. The cold had found them, but for the first time, Evan was not entirely afraid. He had an ally. He had a reason to fight. The days after the first encounter with the alien visitor passed in a tense blur. Evan could no longer ignore the warning she had given him. The sleeper was real, alive beneath the ice, and it was coming for the warmth of everything on the surface. Every sensor, every instrument confirmed his growing suspicion. Temperatures were dropping faster than predicted. Structural stress on the dome was increasing, and tremors beneath the planet's frozen crust were growing more violent with each passing hour. Evan spent the daylight hours studying the maps of the subterranean tunnels, trying to find a way to reach the deeper geothermal cores that sustained the native species. Lyra had returned each night, trembling and whispering the same words, but now there was a new urgency in her voice. "We must go, before it finds everything. It cannot be stopped above, only below, near the heart." He understood immediately what she meant. The geothermal heart. A chamber of heat and energy that kept her people alive beneath the ice could be the key to survival. If the sleeper reached it, the life of the entire underground network and the humans on the surface would be consumed. Evan knew the humans' technology, combined with her people's knowledge, might be the only chance to fight it. That night, the storm outside howled louder than ever. The dome trembled under the strain of the wind, the icy gusts forcing their way through even the smallest openings. Lyra appeared as always, frost swirling around her glowing form, eyes wide with fear. She whispered, "It grows stronger. We have little time." Evan nodded and motioned for her to follow. He led her to the maintenance tunnels beneath the dome, small passages used by the engineers for repairs and inspections. The walls were cold, but here they were shielded from the worst of the storm. As they moved deeper into the tunnels, the air grew heavier, almost oppressive, and Evan felt the first hints of fear that had only been a whisper in his mind before. The deeper they went, the more unstable the ice became. Cracks appeared in the tunnel walls, small falls of ice threatened to block their path, and the strange tremors beneath them were no longer distant. They felt like the heartbeat of a giant, ancient being. Lyra explained that the sleeper fed on warmth, energy, and even life itself. It was a predator unlike any other, and it had been sealed away generations ago by her people using the geothermal heat cores as a trap. Now, it had awakened. They finally reached a junction where several tunnels converged, and Evan paused to check the maps. According to the records, the main geothermal core lay straight ahead, but the path was partially collapsed. Lyra warned that the sleeper would be drawn to them. Every step they took increased the risk of being detected. Evan tightened his grip on the small heat generator he carried, a human-made device capable of producing concentrated warmth. As they moved forward, the first signs of the sleeper became visible. Shadows shifted beneath the ice, fog-like tendrils curling along the walls and floor. Evan felt the cold pressing against him, a living, suffocating presence that drained warmth with each passing second. Lyra stayed close, using her small glow to illuminate their path, guiding Evan safely through the maze-like tunnels. Hours passed in this tense, silent march. They navigated falls, narrow passages, and dangerous slopes, all the while sensing the sleeper moving closer, its presence heavier, almost tangible. Finally, they reached a cavern that housed the geothermal core. The chamber was massive, walls lined with natural rock formations through which heat radiated, creating pockets of relative warmth. Steam hissed from fissures, forming clouds in the air. The core's energy pulsed like a heartbeat, but it was weaker than it should have been. The sleeper had already begun feeding on it. Evan realized that simply reaching the core was not enough. They needed to reactivate the human heat reactor brought to the planet months earlier. It was capable of producing enough thermal energy to disrupt the sleeper, but it required precise operation and carried a significant risk. If it failed, both the humans and the alien species might be consumed. Lyra guided Evan to the reactor, a compact device unlike anything in the native tunnels. Its panels glowed faintly, waiting to be activated. "You must go close," she warned. "The closer you are, the stronger the effect. I cannot survive the exposure for long." Evan nodded, understanding the risk. He approached the reactor, setting it in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the walls of heat that were now being drained by the sleeper. He felt the cold pressing against him like a physical weight, sapping his strength, and he drew on every ounce of human resilience. Lyra stayed behind him, shielding him from the worst of the cold tendrils, her small form glowing brighter with effort. He activated the reactor. A bright light filled the chamber, and a wave of warmth surged outward. The effect was immediate. The frost dissipated, and the tendrils of the sleeper recoiled, hissing as if in pain. But the creature was enormous, its presence still overwhelming. Evan realized that activating the reactor was only part of the solution. He needed to maintain the energy flow while Lyra directed it toward the heart of the sleeper. The chamber trembled violently. Ice cracked, and small falls of rock threatened to bury them. Evan focused on keeping the reactor stable, his hands steady despite the shivering cold. Lyra chanted softly in her native language, guiding the energy in waves toward the sleeper. It writhed, a monstrous shadow of frost and mist, and Evan could see its form briefly, massive, shifting, and consuming everything in its path. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Every second was a battle between warmth and cold, human ingenuity and alien ancient power. Evan felt exhaustion creeping in, but he drew strength from the knowledge that failure was not an option. Lyra's presence, fragile yet determined, reminded him of why he could not give up. Finally, the reactor reached its peak. A pulse of heat, brighter than the sun, erupted from the device, filling the chamber with warmth that made the frost melt instantly. The sleeper let out a soundless roar, the vibrations echoing through the tunnels, and then it began to crack. Tendrils of frost shattered, pieces of ice collapsing inward until the creature finally disintegrated into harmless mist. The geothermal core slowly recovered. Heat radiated throughout the chamber once more, stabilizing the tunnels and saving the underground network. Evan collapsed to his knees, exhausted but alive. Lyra moved toward him, glowing softly, her form flickering as she absorbed the warmth now flowing freely. She smiled faintly, the first real sign of relief he had seen since their journey began. "You did it," she whispered. Her voice was weak, but filled with awe. "We are safe." Evan nodded, still catching his breath. "We did it. Together." They spent hours recovering in the warmth of the geothermal chamber, the danger of the sleeper finally gone. Lyra explained more about her people, their history, and the ways they had lived beneath the ice for generations. She told him that humans had always fascinated her species, not only for their warmth, but also for their resilience and determination. Evan realized that the connection they had formed was deeper than mere survival. It was mutual trust, respect, and the shared experience of facing an unimaginable threat. When they finally returned to the surface, the outpost was intact, but still fragile. The storm had passed, leaving a silent, frozen landscape that glimmered under the distant light of the planet's sun. The research team emerged from their shelters, unaware of the true danger they had narrowly avoided. Evan and Lyra moved quietly among them, knowing that the alien species and humans would need to work together to prepare for any future threats. Over the following days, the humans and Lyra's people began cooperation. Shared technology and knowledge helped strengthen the outpost, improve heating systems, and monitor the ice beneath the surface. Lyra chose to stay near Evan, not because the cold forced her, but because she had found safety, warmth, and trust in a human being. Evan had changed as well. He understood that humans carried more than warmth. They carried ingenuity, courage, and the ability to confront forces far larger than themselves. He had faced the sleeper, worked alongside an alien being, and survived. He felt stronger, braver, and more aware of the possibilities that lay ahead, not just for himself, but for all who would live on this frozen world. The nights were no longer filled with fear. When Lyra came to his room, it was no longer a desperate search for warmth, but a quiet companionship, a shared acknowledgement of what they had faced together. The cold still raged outside, and the world remained dangerous, but inside the dome, they had created a pocket of safety, trust, and hope. Evan knew the sleeper could rise again someday, or another threat might emerge from the depths of the frozen planet. But he also knew that humans and aliens could face it together, combining courage, intellect, and resilience in ways that neither species could achieve alone. And that knowledge gave him a confidence he had never felt before. For the first time since arriving on this planet, Evan felt a sense of home, not in the dome, not in the warmth, but in the connection he had forged with Lyra, and in the understanding that even in the harshest, coldest worlds, life and hope could survive. The alien visitor no longer whispered about the cold. She whispered stories of her people, of their survival, and of the light that warmth, human warmth, could bring to the darkest, coldest corners of the universe. And Evan listened, knowing that together they had not only survived, but had forged a bond that would endure long after the frost had melted. The sleeper was defeated, but the memory of it remained, a silent warning beneath the ice. Evan and Lyra stood together at the edge of the frozen plains, gazing at the horizon. The wind was still sharp, the night still dark, but they no longer feared it. They had each other, and they had survived the impossible. That was enough.